I'm Groot. Hi guys, Ben at Carbo Creations. As you can see, I've printed off a Baby Groot. I can guarantee you most people with a 3D printer have either thought about printing him off, have got him lined up ready to go to print off, or have printed him off already. In this video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint him up, give you a few little tips and tricks on applying paint to give it a bit more of a pop. I'm also going to design and build a little 3D stand to sit him in, so he sits in his own little environment and it just has that more aesthetic appeal when he sits on the shelf. So anyway, stick around and I'll show you how I'm going to get it done. Now this print's not straight off the printer. As you can see, maybe just here, he is printed off in a blue PLA, but I've already sprayed him with a flat grey primer and done some prep work as well. I've done a bit of filling on some parts that weren't there with Tamiya's modelling putty, and then I've also done a couple of coats with an SCA primer filler. So this spray paint's got some small particles in it that are going to fill some small gaps. It is an automotive spray paint, so you can pick it up from your local auto parts store. But the one thing with this and also with the filler is you've got to be a little bit careful when preparing the surface. As you can see on Groot's head here, there's still some visible print lines from the 3D print, but you can also see some loss of detail where maybe I've sanded back a bit too far or filled in the gaps and lost that vertical detail of the grooves in the bark of Groot's face. Now that is a risk you're going to have to weigh up when preparing the model, is how much of the printed surface you want to hide and how much detail you're willing to lose. It does matter when it comes to painting because we're going to use essentially three main layers of paint, the shadows, midtones and highlights. Now if we get rid of too much detail, we lose the contour of the model and the ability to really bring out those valleys for the shadows and the ridges for the highlights. So in terms of paint, I'm going to be using a range of student acrylic paints, mainly reds and browns and a couple of gold oxides and yellows, not to mention a couple of greens for the crown. Now I'm using this image of Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy 2 as my point of reference. Now I've picked up British Paint's Paint and Prime chocolate gloss from the local hardware store. I've only just realised it's gloss, but that shouldn't matter. As we're going to paint over the top of it, it will knock some of that sheen off. So the painting technique I'm going to use for the majority of Groot is what's known as dry brushing. So essentially what you want to do is get a small amount of paint on the end of your brush, try and remove as much of that paint as possible so you've only got a small amount, and as you lightly brush over the surface of the model, it will pick up on all the ridges and all the highlights, leaving the shadow detail where it is. You can vary the pressure you use to get different amounts of coverage. For the midtones you'd use sort of a mild pressure, but for the highlights you would just barely be touching the surface just to pick up on those very top ridges and edges. For the midtones, I'm going to do a dark brown to light brown and mix in some reds as well, and also mix the paints at varying levels and just dry brushing them on one at a time, building nice layers of colours from that dark through to light. The top coat on my highlights, I'm going to be mixing browns and yellows to bring out that rich wood colour of Groot. And of course, as Baby Groot's still growing up, he's still got a bit of moss and foliage on his crown. So we'll use a dark green underneath just to give a bit of shadow and a light green on top for the highlights. I also have some green flock that I've had from modelling days past. I'm going to use an old brush and dab some wood glue or PVA glue across some highlights on Groot's arms, maybe his chest and his crown, and then I'll sprinkle the green flocking on top to make it look like moss or grass growing from Groot's body. So there you go guys, that's my Baby Groot all painted up. I hope you got something out of it. All up, it took me about an hour to paint him. It was a really fun project to get my hands on. As I did say at the start of this video, I am going to work on a little environment and base to put him on. This is the base stand I've printed up already with my 3D printer, so you'll see more of that next week. As always, leave any comments below and feedback. As I said, I hope you got something out of it. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you around.